Hello and welcome to another episode of Behind the Boardroom. Joining us today is a very, very special guest, which is Patrick Karayil, all the way from the United States. So before I introduce this personality, I would like to call Patrick, and please, Patrick, introduce yourself to our audience.
Thank you, Ritesh, for this opportunity. Hi, everyone. My name is Patrick Karayil. As Ritesh mentioned, I am the president of the American Colleges. I've been in the higher education space for over a decade, and definitely looking forward to talking about what American Colleges here is and anything else that Ritesh wants to cover.
Sure. So before talking about American colleges, I would like to introduce Patrick better to our audience. So Patrick did his bachelor's in computer science from Arizona State University, which is in US. And after that, you have completed your master's in business administration, which is the MBA from MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the greatest university in the world right now. So after that, you are also a Presidential Innovation Fellow in the White House right now. And apart from that, you are the president of American Colleges, right?
That's right.
We are going to cover everything in today's podcast, and I'm pretty sure this is going to be a very exciting and informative podcast for all of us, for you, me, and for the audience, definitely. So before we dive, let's first talk about American colleges. Talking about the name or listening about the name, I feel like it is something revolving around the colleges which is based in United States, or if anyone wants to take admission into United States, or how it can be. So is it the really case?
Yeah, that's exactly what the case is. So I've been in the higher education sector for, as I mentioned, like a decade. But prior to that, as Ritesh, as you pointed out, I was an international student from India to the US. That was actually roughly 20 years ago. And then as an international student, I have my own journey. And then later, when I came into the education space, I understood that journey and all those like precarious decision making, all those elements actually like still persisted even today. And then when you sort of think about the industry, it's very largely a for-profit driven industry. And that shouldn't be the case. So when I sort of created this concept of American colleges, it was really to provide students free information so that everyone would know exactly what they need to do to think about choosing to do an education in the US or Canada. They didn't have to go spend thousands of dollars to an agency or to a counselor, or they didn't have to really succumb to the for-profit models that these agencies followed. So that's sort of the vision for the American colleges. It's a not-for-profit entity, and then we're also part of the American Education Board. So that also drives the authenticity of the work that we do.
So there's one thing that I wanted to know, because a lot of people, some of my friends, and there are many people that I have met, they wanted to study abroad, whether it is colleges from UK or US, right? And in India, there is a brokerage culture. There's a broker culture. Like you give your all the necessary exams, and then you contact some brokers, and then they'll say they're gonna take some certain cut, and then you can get into your dream college. But most of the time, it didn't happen, right? So that you have said you are a non-profit organization and you help students get the right colleges. So what's the right way to approach you guys? Like, how do I approach you to get the knowledge?
Yeah. So Ritesh, I think the point that you mentioned is actually absolutely correct. Like, I just want to further underscore that in India, there are two kinds of agencies or brokerages that you rightfully called out. Number one is I would go to you and I would actually like spend, maybe like from 20,000 rupees to like upwards of a few lakhs with this agency in the hopes that this agency will help me get into my dream school. So that's like category or bucket number one. There's another bucket, which is like, oh, come to us, we're free, there's no cost to you. We're gonna actually like help you get to the US or Canada or UK or Australia, anywhere you choose to go to. The catch there is they're being remunerated by the university. So they get a commission. The university will pay them a commission if they are able to place a student into a particular university. And so the challenge there is whether or not that particular brokerage or an agency is working in the student's best interest or in their best interest, because they're actually going to make a commission based on if they choose to direct a student to that particular university. Now, what makes American colleges very unique is we're a not-for-profit model. We provide free resources. Most of our resources, like we put it out there on our YouTube channel, or our Instagram channel, which is like youtube.com/American colleges, or just my Instagram page, which is like instagram.com/Patrick_Karayil. Most of it, all of it is really free. And if someone actually really wants to get in touch and like have a specific case about their journey, and that's also like free, we just actually like put that on YouTube as well. And so like we would clearly not put that individual on camera, but all of this resources, because if one individual is having that question, there are likely scores of others who have a very similar question. So we really want to actually assist them. We also have master classes, which are, I've taken all of the learnings and put this into an actual course, and you can take that. And it's actually almost free. Literally, it's almost free. It's just actually available for our students out there as well. And if someone can't afford to take that master class, they can contact me, and then we can even waive that fee as well. So there are ways that we're just really just trying to make sure that students have all of the information that they need without, one, having to pay for it, and number two, not feeling like they're going to be placed somewhere because that agent's going to get a commission. We have zero commission model.
So, driving me to this question, so you are from the Indian origin, right? You completed your schooling from India, and then you became an international student and you shifted to US like almost 22 decades ago, right?
Yes.
So at that time there was no internet culture. So what was the initial challenges that you faced while you were immigrating from India to US?
Oh, that is actually a really great question, Ritesh. So when I went to the US, like this was like, 98, 99 timeframe. The internet had just come about. Oh, the internet's been around for like a good 5 years, but none of us really had computers. I came from a small village in my home state in Kerala, so we had no computers. My dad had to go to the American embassy to really even get information about universities, and they gave like this fairly thick binder with lists of every university in the U.S. that actually like it's an A through Z like list of all universities, and it just listed like here are the degrees that they offer and here's the address. Some universities had a website, and so they would just list a website, which didn't really matter to me because there's no way for me to even access the website, right? So I think it was actually it was a moot point. So what I did is I just took at that time I was told you got to take the TOEFL test. So I took the TOEFL test. And when you take the TOEFL test, you get, and if you score decently well, universities would mail you, and back then you get like actual mail in the post. They would mail you their application form, and they would waive the application fee. So whoever gave me an application form and waived the application fee, I just applied. And though that was really my strategy, because like $50 application fee even back then, like now it's actually north of $100, but back then it was all like $45, $50 application fee. That was a lot of money. So anyone that waived it, I just applied to them, and that was really how I started to apply to universities.
And that's how you got into Arizona State University.
Yeah, I got in there. I got into a couple other places, but then eventually we picked Arizona State. They had a really good engineering program, and that kind of just like really drove and cemented the decision.
So now I'm pretty much curious to know about your school life. Like, what type of a student were you? Like, you were topper or something, or was there any plan to shift to US and pursue your further education? Was it an earlier plan?
That's a really great question. So I was not a topper. In fact, in my school, I was probably just an average student. And this is really where like the US education is like head and shoulders above like just what our Indian education model is. And I'm a big advocate for it because, a student like myself, which is like, I would say like an average to maybe an above average student, like my CBSE 10th grade, like I had scored an 80.2 average. That was my CBSE 10th grade average. My CBSE 12th grade average was like a 78%, right? So like I would not consider that to be a topper. I would consider that to be an average to maybe an above average, depending on the lens that you choose to use. But it was really my dad. Like he just really wanted me to pursue an education abroad. And that really just sort of put me in that mindset of going abroad. That was really the reason. And then the US gives you opportunities that I feel like India or many other developing markets don't really provide. like you get to find your own voice. You get to really develop some of these personality traits that can really bind you for success, which I think if I had done my university life in India, I probably would have missed out on. Um, and so yeah, so I'm a big proponent of that. But math was my favorite topic, hence the engineering was actually like picked. So I remember like in my CBSE 10th board exams, I scored a 93. And I was actually like over the moon, like the fact that I'd scored like that well. And I think that was like my highest scoring subject at the time. So I actually innately gravitated towards math. But like I would classify myself as like an average student.
So there is one more curious question that I wanted to know, because these days IITs are considered as one of the best institutes of this country where you can do your graduations. So let's go back in time in like in the late 1990s. So at that time, was it easier to crack foreign colleges or US colleges as compared to IITs?
That's a great question. So I never even applied for, the JEE exams or the IITs. I did not think I was going to qualify just with the grades that I was actually having within CBSE, right? Like I was not a topper, or my full average was not a 90 plus in all the subjects. So IIT was kind of out. And also at the same time, I don't think I would have cracked MIT either at that stage, right? Going after grade 12, high school, going to MIT, I don't think so either. So I was I was able to crack the US education well, partially because I was able to really just apply myself in a different capacity. Because like the US really focuses on applied thinking versus really the theoretical regurgitation that the Indian models have, right? It's no longer studying things by heart. It's really how do you practically apply what you've learned. And that's where I started to shine. So I didn't really shine until I came to the US. And then the grades were actually like much easier. So like for me personally, it was easier for me to get an A grade in the US than it was to actually like get an A grade equivalent back in India. My GPA from MIT was a 4.0. And I don't think like I would have been a 4.0 student at MIT had it not been for my undergrad experience at Arizona State, which wasn't a 4.0 there. But I think it's that kind of like learning that really sets you up to really thrive in the US education system, but also US economy overall.
That's amazing to hear. Well, there's one more question because I'm getting a lot of question. I just want to clear it out. So you completed your early education from India. Now today, your kids are completing their early education from US. So what is the differences that you see between the Indian Education Board and the US Education Board?
Yeah, so I have a 10-year-old daughter and I have a 3.5-year-old daughter. My 10-year-old is in grade 4 at the moment. My 3.5-year-old is not in school yet, and so my wife and I, we often like have this dialogue as to if the student if we have to put our daughter into a really good school or can we should go to a public school. So she's going to a Montessori school, which is neither nor. It's not a public, it's not a private, it's really a Montessori style of education. I'm married to someone from the US, so she has a very different mode of thinking compared to us from India. And so I think the biggest factor that I sort of see is education, the early education, like not even at the high school level. So early elementary education is very multidisciplinary, which is not something that we have in India. So in India, you're thrust into the topics of science and math and social sciences and all of it. But here, early education is very multidisciplinary, where you're engaging all facets of learning. So my daughter is a very much of a kinesthetic learner, where she needs to actually touch and feel things and build things to really understand. So math to her, the way she does math, so I do a lot of mental math. I'm very much of a visual learner. But to her, she needs to actually take the 3 and place the 3 down here, takes the multiplication sign, place it there. And then she's like, okay, 3 times 4 is 12, and she can do it. But she needs to actually touch and feel. So it's very multidisciplinary. So it takes the learnings from different fields and amalgamate amalgamates it all so these students can really learn and adapt. It's also very individualized. So if you think about like the Indian way of learning, you've got like 30 students thrust into a classroom, and it's the instructor or the teacher sort of dictates the modality of learning. But here, it's very individualized depending on the type of school that you go to, where if someone is a particular type of a learner, then you can adjust the curriculum for that individual so that they're all thriving well. Now, I'm making these statements in a very blanket sense, meaning like there's got to be schools in India now that's adopting it, which I've not addressed. There are schools in the U.S. which are not great, right? Like many of the public schools in big cities are not really great schools because they don't have the right funding. So outside of that, I'm speaking in terms of a family sending their child to a decent education and doing the juxtaposition between the US and Canada. What I had mentioned previously is sort of the parallels that you'll start to see.
Yeah, so that was some of the curiosities that I wanted to know. And yeah, you have stated some of the really true statements. Like in India, we are more into this theoretical knowledge, and in US, obviously, you have said you are more into this execution and practical knowledge. You can see things and visualize things. Here we recite things. So that is also my experience, like how I have been to schools and everything. So that's used to be a culture and a structure that I would say. So why I asked you this question, the basic reasons behind that, I wanted to know your motivation behind building American colleges. Like I can see, building American college is just not a non-profit organization or not just a company for you, but I think you have just put in all your emotions and experiences so that the students that are going to come in the future, who wants to join America and be the part of its education. So you are just putting them into a pathway where they can learn and do not make the mistake that we guys did or you guys did. So I guess that's the whole motivation behind it.
Earlier in my career, I went to the U.S. to do a computer science degree and then did my MBA. And my career journey has started in the technical space. I got early opportunities to be involved with NASA and then Motorola and Dell and National Instruments and all those tech-related companies, and I moved on to the business side. So then as I evolved I've taken like CXO type roles, which are like chief marketing officer, chief digital officer in different industries. And then I became a CMO for an education company, an edtech company. And then I started to advise education companies, like very large education companies that like these are billion-dollar education companies that they either engage with students and enroll them in on-campus programs. I was also the former vice president for U.S. News, Global Education, and I'd partnered with these companies that would then partner with universities. And in that capacity, I'd probably engaged with like over 40 different universities, and I really understood like the enrollment and recruitment decisions that universities actually like make. And I really wanted to channel all this into these learnings and understanding, because you get to peek behind the curtain, and not just at one or two universities, right? Like 40 universities, you're engaging with them and helping drive strategies for what they can do in India. And I really felt like I wanted to channel this forward to helping students. I didn't really want to do another for-profit model, although I could very easily do so. But I felt like I think more doing this sort of not-for-profit approach was actually like the right calling. And it's a great way for me to give back as well. So then I formed an alliance with the American Education Board in really allowing for that. And so we're the international arm for the American Education Board. And we largely just work with students. The American Education Board works with the universities and really just their overall strategy, but we work with students largely, and we offer this all for free.
So there is, don't mind me asking, but you are bringing so much to the table. You have done so much research, and all your experiences are there. You're solving a very huge problem. So why make it for free? Like almost you're making it for free. Why are not charging it? Why making it a non-profit organization?
Yeah, so I think it kind of goes to like the ethos of just why starting this up. So if we offered this for a fee, then what really distinguishes us from just all the other players, right? Like we're going right into the for-profit model. Now there are others who actually like offer advice and guidance for free, but then more than likely they're being remunerated or they're getting commissioned by the universities, and we didn't really want that either. So it was a tough decision for sure, right? Because you can't be first a nonprofit or not for profit and then choose to then become a for profit, right? You just don't go through that level of a sea change. And so being a not for profit was a calculated decision because we were focused on impact more than revenue. I think if the impact is there, then I think the revenue aspects will kind of work itself out. But we really wanted to make sure that students had a unified voice that they could actually go to for that was authentic, that actually had a level of authenticity to it, and that actually had a level of expertise. And that's really what we're trying to offer.
Amazing. So that's really insightful to know like how you are not focusing on revenue right now, but moreover, you are trying to build an impact around the places. So moving on to another question. So a lot of people from India are doing engineering. Like there are load and load of engineers all around, right? So how was your experience in Arizona State University? Like you were pursuing BTech back in 1998 or 1999. That was the same batch of Mark Zuckerberg. Like he was also of the same batch, I would say, from Harvard.
He was actually at Harvard in 2005, I want to say. So this was even prior to that.
So you're even senior of Zuckerberg. So what was the environment there? Like how was the BTech in a US university or Arizona State University?
I think it was really just one of the most transformative experiences that I could have actually asked for. Funny story. So when I first landed in Arizona, I remember calling my parents and telling them, I think we made a mistake. I don't think I'm in the US. Like I'm not seeing any tall buildings. I'm not seeing any snow. That was my frame of reference with the US. Like, tall buildings and snow. Like Arizona was really hot. Like in July, it's the middle of the desert, so it gets like the temperatures were just like nearly 40 degrees Celsius, and that's not what I expected. I had a suitcase full of jackets and hats and gloves, which is what my parents thought that I needed coming to the US. Because again, like lack of information, right? Like we don't have the internet to really search for or even anyone to ask. So yeah, so that was a funny story. But I think in my first year itself, like the kind of courses that you took, I had to take a sociology class, and you take like a humanities class, and like stuff that you consider to be quite irrelevant for computer science, because that's what I had chosen to do. It's like it didn't make any sense as to why I would have to take those. So there was a level of, why are we paying all this money for you to take courses that's kind of irrelevant? But in retrospect, I think that's really what made the difference. Like versus just taking engineering related classes, you're taking other streams, other areas of learning, and you're infusing that with an engineering. So the kinds of social circles that you're getting to be a part of, those will all actually help you eventually end up. The engineering itself was really interesting because I took like computer science, but then I made sure that I was taking some of these harder classes that were more systems engineering oriented, because I knew like if I did well in those classes, then that would eventually lead me to a job. I was interested in pursuing maybe biomedical, so I kind of took like a few of those like medical science oriented classes. I was really interested in like NASA and aerospace, so I kind of took.
You get to choose your own classes?
Yeah, so that's exactly right. So you're given a template, and in your template that says you need to go take X number of science classes, X number of humanities classes, and Y number of computer science classes. Now, within those Y number of computer science classes, you have like core curriculum. Like these you can't, like they are non-negotiables. You can't change them. You just have to take them. But everything else, you're given a template that says, as long as it actually like meets these credit hour requirements, then you can take them. And it's really up to you to choose to take what you want to. So I went on this exploratory journey because you're paying the tuition. As long as you can meet the credit hours, it doesn't really matter what you're taking. So I kind of took like some aerospace courses, biomedical courses, systems engineering courses, which are not really required for computer science, but those will kind of, the aerospace courses kind of got me into doing a project with NASA, which really just helped. The computer systems engineering courses helped me get an internship as as a science scholar. It's called like a consortium for networking and embedded technology scholars. So I was a science scholar at Motorola, and that wouldn't have happened had I not taken the systems engineering courses. So the US offers that ability. Now, whether or not the student takes that on, it's up to them, right? Like, so they would have to decide and say, I'm going to go take these and explore my field of vision so that I can make something out of it. It's up to the student to do that.
That's amazing. So that was your experience doing your bachelor's in computer science from Arizona State University. So now
One of the things I did earlier on is I decided to do on-campus jobs. And something I often stress to students is even if you don't need to do a job, let's actually say you come from a well-to-do family, which was not the case for me. But if that's even the case, then you should still do on-campus jobs, because I think that's really what sort of refined my ability to communicate effectively, because you're engaging in a work environment, but on campus. You're still on campus. And so I got the privilege of actually like working in a computer lab, and then I moved to the dean's office, and then you're working with the associate dean and on different projects that she would have. And I think all of those really helped me get my internship. So don't actually discard an on-campus job. And I think like when I think back 20 years, those on-campus job opportunities really greatly help mold and shape your personality.
So that's something that our audience will definitely take a note of. And now comes to the very interesting topic. Like, how did you land to MIT? Was it a previous plan, earlier plan that you want to do your MBA from MIT, or was it something else?
Yeah, so I was actually like thinking I needed to do an advanced education. I was thinking either choosing law or choosing MBA. And those two were just the options. The law was going to be 3 years and MBA was going to be like 2. And I chose to do an MBA over law. But at the same time, people of an Indian origin in the US with a computer or an engineering background trying to choose an MBA or pursue an MBA, we are a dime a dozen. Firstly, let me just actually make that clear. Like the number of applicants that go to an MBA school, or the number of applications an MBA school receives from people of Indian origin with an engineering background trying to choose an MBA, there's actually just a lot of us. And so I had to really find a way to really distinguish and stand out, because like I knew if I'm going to do an MBA, which was roughly $200,000 of an education, right? Like it's a very expensive education. It had to be noteworthy. So it had to be an elite education. So very earlier on, I said like if it wasn't going to be like the top 5, I wasn't going to do it because it wasn't going to be economical. The ROI calculation wasn't there. I happened to take a course at MIT. So like it was literally just a 2-day course in Boston. And that just really cemented my thinking that MIT is really where I wanted to go. And that's the only school I applied to because I was like so sure. I really just fell in love with the Cambridge area, the MIT campus, and it's MIT, right? Like it's every engineer's dream is MIT. Yeah. So as an engineer and working on like projects with like NASA or Motorola, you know, like we would just sort of die and go to heaven with like if we can talk to someone at MIT. So when I took a course, I just was like, this is where I really wanted to go. And the following year, I applied to the Sloan School of Management. And I was super enthusiastic. I had all the right letters of recommendation, and did all my test taking. Everything was actually like in what I thought was actually like the best case scenario, only to be rejected. So I got rejected at MIT, and that was actually like that was difficult. And I was like, you know what, it's fine. I'm not going to choose to do my MBA. And but then the next year I was like, you know what I'm going to try one more time. I'm going to just do it one more time, and then we'll see what happens. And then I re-upped my game. I got better letters of recommendation, and I took it all the way to the highest levels of leadership to really give me a letter of recommendation. I was working for Dell at the time, and thankfully I had some really good my boss and my boss's boss's boss wrote me a recommendation letter, And it worked. And so the second time around, I got an admit, and I was over the moon. I was so thrilled about it. I still remember the day when I got the phone calls from MIT saying that I was accepted to their class.
So I know that feeling of like no one can define it, only you can define that, like getting into the greatest university right now. So coming to the next question, what makes MIT the greatest, like one of the best to exist on this planet?
Yeah. So I think when you think about, what does a great university offer, and what sort of makes MIT so great, is largely the people that's there. So MIT has like this great magnetism about it. It's able to attract like the world's best minds, scientific minds, to come either work there as a researcher, a lecturer, professor, or anywhere in between. Like you've got like these very, very elite people who actually like engage there, and across all disciplines, like not just computer science or engineering, but just like across like all the different sciences that they're there. So the faculty is great. Like you've got like Nobel Prize winners who actually like come engage with you. Like we were fortunate to take an economics lecture from Nobel Prize winners, and the individual that created the internet, Sir Tim Berners-Lee, has an office at MIT. Right, so you have access to these sort of individuals. They kind of give guest lectures, even though they may not be teaching a course. You have the opportunity of listening, hearing them. They bring in people from the industry. They bring in like all kinds of individuals to help nurse and nurture the education that you're getting there. So I think it's the people side. So you've got the greatest minds, and you've got like the greatest young minds there. To be a student at MIT is a very humbling experience, because you get to realize the whole time I was there, I had this feeling that I don't really fit in here. Like, how am I here? Like, because literally every single person that you actually like meet, they've done some level of work within like their schools or in the private sector that they've driven like a level of impact that I haven't really done. So you kind of feel out of place when you're there, but you kind of embrace like as much of it as possible, both the learning side, also the extracurricular side. Like I remember one of my fond experiences is engaging with the MIT's chess club, and just getting to see like how people actually like do computational math in their head to really sort of think about like what the next move is. Engaging with the MIT Center of Entrepreneurship, which is an extensive network of resources that they actually shore up if you choose to do a career in entrepreneurship, or any other discipline of that choice.
So that was amazing to know. And what makes MIT great is the people like you there, which makes MIT great. Not just the people and all the environment which is there, and the vast culture, the legacy that has been going on throughout. It is like amazing. So as we know a fact that MIT and Harvard is separated by a small pond or something, I guess. So is there any competition between these two colleges, like MIT guys and Harvard guys? Is there any sort of a competition?
Yeah, very much so. So MIT and Harvard is actually separated by what's known as the Charles River that flows through Boston, and there is like a lot of competition between the two universities. Partially because of the history. Like back in the day, MIT was like just a small technical college, because Harvard was like Harvard, right? Like it was actually from like the 14th century, and Harvard actually built colleges around medicine, law, and business, right? Like that's the three aspects of things. And MIT was really about what was the common man. Like they was really about like just helping people get better at doing work that was all about like engineering, but the word engineering wasn't really there. It was more of a technical school, and at one point Harvard had the ability to buying out MIT. It wasn't called MIT at that time, but they chose not to do it because they were just like, oh, we're Harvard, we've got like doctors and lawyers and business people, and so we don't really need like technical schools. That's just like too inferior. So they chose not to do it, and now they're actually, like effectively you've got the world's two best universities, like just a stone's throw away from each other. Um, Although there's competition, so within business schools itself, like HBS and Sloan, there are competition. Faculty sometimes actually like move back and forth between like the two schools. So you get like sometimes you get Harvard professors at Harvard. Now they actually are teaching at MIT or vice versa. We get to cross-register. So if you choose to, as an MIT student, you can take any Harvard course that you want to, and vice versa too. Harvard students can take MIT courses as well. Harvard has their own entrepreneurship competitions. MIT has their own entrepreneurship competitions as well. Sometimes actually like students would join a team with other students. Maybe the student is from Harvard, but so you have like there's competition, but there's also collaboration between the two universities. Depends on like, I think who you ask.
So there is a genuine doubt in my mind. So me being a student from India, okay, so I have seen that Harvard has offered a lot of courses for like CS50, CS100, and a lot of computer science courses are there on the internet. But when it comes like if I want to get some courses from MIT, so how can I get that? Do I have access to it?
To take courses, so what I would say is go to edx.org, edx.org, and then you will see a lot of courses that MIT offers, and it's all there for free, right? Like, so you can take an edX course from MIT. MIT is one of the founding members of the edx.org platform, and it's really online courses that's actually allowed for the general public. It's really about democratizing education, and you can take these are non-degree courses, but you could take like basic programming courses to like advanced like data science courses. They're all out there on edX. So that's a really good resource to actually like take. MIT also has your own MIT Open courseware website where you could go directly and watch the course and download the syllabi and the homework for a particular course for a particular year that was actually offered. So you could probably take a course, you could probably see the materials of that course, but the edX platform is probably where I would recommend to go take one. And it's actually often a good thing. I'm so glad that you asked that, Ritesh, because typically before a student thinks about coming to the US, they should take an online course from an MIT. These are certificate courses, right? You can take a course for $0. If you want a certificate, I think they charge like $99 or so. And you can get a certificate, and all of those adds to your credentials, right? The fact that you can say that I took an MIT data science course, and it's on edX, but I think the fact that you took it, that could actually reflect well on your drive and your personality and your intention of succeeding in the US. So those are all really good resources to engage with.
That was one of the reasons that I asked this, because like it's a dream for us to get a certification, because I know it will be very hard for us for today to get into MIT or Harvard's, but it would be a great honor to get a certification and have something out of MIT or Harvard's or all the other great colleges out there. So so that was your educational background. So your engineering, your MBA. So after graduating from MIT, like how your life changed? Like how did your life change? What was the changes that you're seeing all around?
Yeah, so in terms of, I think the kinds of roles that I was getting from a career standpoint, actually, that changed. Like I was now taking on much more senior roles in the private sector. I was, I think I very in quick order moved to become, as I mentioned, like a CMO for a variety of different companies. And I don't think I would have been able to do that level of step function change in my career if it wasn't for the MIT experience. So that's number one. Number two, I think it's really also the multidisciplinary thinking that you get further expanded while you're at MIT, because you sort of think about things differently. Everything is actually like quite strategic and much more calculated. So I would take very calculated risks and very calculated steps from a planning standpoint, whether that's career or just life in general. Virtually everyone gets like the entrepreneurship bug at MIT. Like almost every student would try and start to think about what it's like to build a company and how you do it well, and what are some of the pitfalls you have and challenges amongst the founders. And I know like that's it's time for a different episode maybe, but there's just a lot that you sort of get and learn from it. And the MIT experience is not a there's no start and stop to it. Like it continues on. So every single year, as an MIT alumni, we're invited back to campus, and we can take a course during the IAP month, which is actually in January. So in this January, I'm back at MIT, and we get to take a course. It's a 2-day course that we get to engage with the faculty, and so so the MIT ecosystem is very much well and live throughout the rest of our lives, so which is actually a really good benefit.
That's amazing to know. That's amazing to know. So since you have mentioned about the things that you have learned in MIT, so obviously we're looking forward for one more episode where you're going to just teach us those things, and you are going to take a workshop. So Patrick, I'm quite curious to know, like, since you have been to such big universities, you have also worked with NASA, Dell, and you're also you're working for the White House. So we are going to come to that White House topic. But I was curious to know, like, who were one of the most popular alumni or popular colleagues that you have worked with that the world knows right now?
So at Dell, we have access to like just the highest levels of leadership, as I mentioned. I remember emailing Michael Dell about choosing to leave Dell to go do my MBA, and at that time, I think Dell was going through this big transformation, and so I messaged him and said, and he'd asked me like, what do you think about like, so I messaged and said, Michael, thank you for the opportunity. I think I'm going to choose to leave the company. And I had no expectations of actually ever getting a response back from him. And but he did respond, and he basically said like, he wished me well on my journey, and he asked me if I was going to choose to come back to work for Dell, and I said I might choose to do a startup instead. And he jokingly said, "Oh, well, we're the largest startup in the world, so you should come back," or something of that kind. I'm paraphrasing, but I thought that was really interesting. During my time at MIT, I had the opportunity of engaging with Larry Summers, who was actually the Treasury Secretary of the U.S. I think he was actually like there during the Bush administration. And so literally he was actually a faculty, I think he was doing a guest lecture at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government and Policy. And I was at an event, and I asked if I could take a picture with him. And he was like, sure. And he kind of put his arm around me, and almost like we were like long lost colleagues or something. And that's the Treasury Secretary of the US, which was actually just amazing. Yeah, I think like those two come to mind at the very top. But then like at MIT, you get to meet like so many personalities that you just don't even know. Like that's the personality that you've met. I remember, so with MIT, you get to do like overseas projects and so on as well. And I had got a chance to work on a project with a company called Li & Fung, which is actually a company that no one's really heard of. But there are 60 at that time. So this is a long time ago. At that time, it was a $60 billion company based in Hong Kong. So we flew to Hong Kong to meet with these people running the company. It's a very large enterprise, and then you get to realize that literally every single piece of clothing, the shirt that I'm wearing to like the T-shirt that you're wearing to just about any piece of clothing, is orchestrated by this company Li & Fung. And so like they actually are, if a company says, I want you to go and manufacture 100 sets of these red pants, they go and say, okay, I'm gonna source the dye from Bangladesh, I'm gonna get the wool from like Thailand, I'm gonna find people who could actually like sew in Cambodia, and I'm gonna ship the products all to like France, and they do all that orchestration. So it's a really big company. And I remember I was actually like traveling in a train in Hong Kong. We just got done with these meetings, and we met the founder of the company, who was actually Harvard educated, and we were traveling back on the train, and we were with some senior executives from Li & Fung, and so we meet a gentleman there on the train, and kind of made some small talk conversation. Literally, it was like 2 stops, and then the gentleman exited, and the person at Li & Fung basically said, "Do you know who that is?" And I said, "No, I don't." And they said, like, that's the founder of the Campbell Soup Company. and he's worth like $2 billion. And I was like, I didn't even recognize the guy. Like, he was not even wearing a suit. He actually had like a shirt on, and I think like just some slacks. But there was nothing contrasting about that individual. It was just like a normally slightly older, like I would probably imagine like 60s year old guy, and that's the founder of Campbell Soup. And we got to have a small conversation with the individual, and he was riding the train in Hong Kong. So yeah, so like you meet a lot of those kinds of personalities, and you don't really know who you've met until someone points it out, because they're just like so humble, and you don't really know like, oh, they're worth just an ungodly amount of money, or they've built a very large enterprise, until a lot later.
So you have mentioned like being successful and at the same time being humble. So that's one of the greatest learning a person can get. Like, success doesn't mean you have to show it off every time. Sometimes being humble and being ground to earth, and that's what something that I can feel from you as well. For our audience, this is not it. Let me tell you, there are more that we have to discuss with Patrick, because we haven't discussed the White House yet. We haven't discussed your ventures in NASA, and we haven't discussed your learnings that you have got from MIT. So there are going to be a lot of episodes. We are going to shoot more with you, and please stay tuned for the future references, because that time Patrick will be with us and he's going to share you all the knowledge. I cannot commit you all the knowledge, but something that Patrick has learned himself, and which is important for us to know, like the people and the entrepreneurs out there who want to bring a change to the society or want to build something of their own and build connection, and how you can get into top universities and making your own portfolio. So we are going to soon connect with you and see you in part 2. Till then, this podcast is brought to you by Geekflare, which is a trusted source for your technological and business related queries. So this is your host, Ritesh, signing off.